The final two categories of exploitative strategies that fall under this general but nondescript rubric of fake news are disinformation and propaganda. Now, these are normally used by large organizations or institutions like governments or big businesses, political organizations, and so on, because it takes a lot of money and a lot of power to execute these strategies well. However, with the rise of social media platforms, individuals can engage in these activities either recruited as willing or unwilling participants in a larger organization scheme or just for their own purposes. Normally, propaganda and disinformation are talked about in the same breath. They aren't considered to be different things by many people, but in fact, I think they do differ, and they differ specifically in their intents. What is the goal? So, practitioners of disinformation seek to infect information ecosystems with ideologically biased information, but also with false and contradictory information. Practitioners of disinformation are disruptors. They don't wish to convince so much as to confuse, to pit elements of a society or a group or a set of individuals against each other. So here's a nice example of this. Again, from the 2016 election, we have a anti-Beyonce protest rally and a pro-Beyonce protest rally. And if you'll notice the dates and the times, these are scheduled for the same date and time. So it turned out that these two posts, these two attempts to recruit people to go to both a protest and a support rally for Beyonce were in fact the same Russian troll factory. They were basically false accounts created by the Russian government. And the idea here is, basically to try and get a whole bunch of people who are inclined to disagree with each other to meet at the same place at the same time, to create confusion, to create conflict, to divide people, to disrupt so that people don't know who to trust or what to believe. People feel like they're pitted against each other. They work against each other as though they were enemies instead of against a common enemy. That is the goal, the purpose of disinformation, as we'll see in the lectures for next week. Propaganda has a slightly different goal or purpose. Propaganda consists in the intentionally biased persuasive rhetoric that often invokes fears or plays on biases, spreads falsehoods to manipulate emotions, opinions, and actions. Propaganda's goal is to persuade people to adopt a course of action or to believe a particular perspective or account of something, regardless of the warrant of that view or the utility of that decision. So here's an example. This is from RT.com. RT is the rebranded version of Russia Today, the Russian-owned news channel that's sometimes carried on cable. I believe my cable package carries Russia Today. And this is from their web outlet. And here's a picture. The former president of the United States, Barack Obama, and the former president of Iran. And there's this contraposition here, this sort of suggestion, right? Who poses the greatest threat? Well, one attempt claimed that they would wipe off Israel from the face of the map using nuclear weapons. The other actively sought to get nuclear fissible material pulled out of circulation so that it couldn't be used to create weapons of mass destruction, the latter being, of course, Barack Obama. And I, in fact, went to an art show, quote unquote, when I visited St. Petersburg. And in that art show, there was all this anti-American propaganda. Barack Obama riding on a little donkey next to Vladimir Putin riding on a bear, this kind of poster, right? This sort of propaganda intended to portray, in this case, Americans as threatening, as bad, as someone who claims they want to start a nuclear war. So we've seen that the varieties of this so-called ubiquitous and undifferentiated thing, fake news, are in fact quite different. They're different in the intent of the creators, the resources available to the creators, the adherence to an ethical code, to journalistic practices, the potential to create false information. All of these things are important to be considered when considering a claim that something is fake news. Fake news is really itself a fake moniker. It's not something that is a single thing that is the indication of something that is necessarily even false. And so when we consume information on information ecosystem, we have to be aware of these different exploitive strategies and be aware of the risk that each of them brings.